Yes, they do. They do. They do. You have to have a relationship. You have to know your characters. And some of them you like and some of them you don't like. Write every day. Even if you can't think of anything to write, sit down and write something. And also, if you're working on your book and you feel really stuck, just write the first thing that comes into your head. And then eventually you can get it, you'll get it worked around so that it'll come out right.
Okay, everyone, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter. As the host of a podcast using the computer over the internet, you never know what's going to happen. But Doralyn has been patiently waiting for me as I try to get everything connected. We're here to talk today about her journey as an author. So excited for her to be on the show. You want to meet one of the most patient authors ever. Doralyn is the person you need to talk to. Doralyn, welcome to Living the Next Chapter. Thank you for being patient with me. You're here. Nice to see you. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you, Dave. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
It's exciting. Tell everybody where you are in this great big world of ours.
I live 150 kilometers east of Toronto in a very small town with about a population of 11,000 people called Brighton. We're right on Presqu'île on Lake Ontario, so it's pretty. It's a vacation area.
Nice. Sounds like a beautiful place. You have a little bit of freezing rain today, but hey, that's what we get in Ontario, right?
That's right. Just as long as it's not piles of snow.
No, we'll just avoid that at all costs. I like that. So we have two Ontario Canadians together in a conversation today. I'm excited to have somebody from my home province on the podcast. This is fun. Good stuff. Let's start with your journey as an author, Doralyn. Like, tell us, how did all this start for you, where becoming an author was something that you were considering? Like, what was that initial spark to get writing?
Yeah, it sort of started in a funny way. I was reading a book. I'm an avid reader. In fact, I used to make my husband angry when we'd go to Blue Jays games downtown Toronto, and I would take a book with me. And he did not like that very well. But I love to read. I've always read. And one time I read a book and it wasn't that good of a book. And I thought, I think I can do better than this. And that put the spark in me of wanting to write. And I did do some writing, a bit of writing, but it didn't really go anywhere. And then after working 35 years in social services, I retired in 2019. And I pulled that desire to write was still with me. And I pulled out some of my old manuscripts. I reworked them. And that was the start of my writing journey. I've been writing steadily since 2019. And my first book I self-published, and then the next two have been traditionally published by a publisher called Elk Lake in Plymouth, Massachusetts. And then my third book is also going to be traditionally published, is coming out this month. So That's been my journey to date.
Excellent. So as an avid reader, what type of books and what type of authors do you like to read?
I like to read good old-fashioned mysteries. I like thrillers. I read Daniel Silva, the common ones, and Daniel Baldacci. I like Michael Connolly, all the very well-known authors. And I also... Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to ask, what about those authors do you like?
I just like the plots. I like that they often have twists, and sometimes they fool you. And I like the way they write. The writing is crisp, it's clear, and they also establish characters that go from book to book. And so you feel that you really get to know the characters, and I like that.
As an author now, as you go back and read some of your favorite books, do you read them differently now that you're an author? Do you see the words differently on the page?
Yes, I do.
Oh,
In fact, I was just reading yesterday a book, and I thought I would change the order of this, have the words, and in fact, I change it as I go along. And I thought, if they wrote it this way, it would be better. So you do that kind of thing, and they would probably read my book and say the same thing.
I'm a musician, so when I listen to music, I'm like, oh, I would do that so much different, or oh, I love how they did that because I would never think to do it that way. So I'm always kind of learning from other people. But at the same time, I see somebody do something really well, and then I get a little intimidated because I'm like, am I even close to that level? Like they're doing it so well, and maybe I'm not as good as I thought I was. Do you ever struggle with the idea of like who's ever going to read my book or read my thoughts?
Oh, you do all the time. You
Yeah.
really do. And I mean, these writers that I write, another writer I like is a Christian writer, Karen Kingsbury. I really like her work, but they've written dozens of books. And so they're way ahead of me. And so I just try to learn all I can from them. Well, I watch, the way they form their plots, their characterization. You just try to learn and keep applying what you've learned.
Do you have any advice for an author listening to the podcast as far as the discipline of writing or how to approach writing as a new author? Anything come to mind?
Yes, it does. It comes to my mind. Write every day. Even if you can't think of anything to write, sit down and write something. And also, if you're working on your book and you feel really stuck, just write the first thing that comes into your head. And then eventually you can get it, you'll get it worked around so that it'll come out right. But if you just sit there and stare at the computer screen, you'll be frozen. So that's why even if I just now, before I talked to you, I was starting a chapter and I wasn't sure where I wanted to go with it exactly. But I started writing, and then I'm more of a pantser than a plotter. And so as I start writing, it comes to me. I know some people do an awful lot of outlining before they start writing, and then they write from the outline. And that has its pluses and minuses. I just haven't been one of those authors. So my advice is write. And the more you write, the better you get.
It's like riding a bicycle. You can learn once, but the more you ride a bicycle, the better you're going to get at it. If you only ride a bicycle once every 10 years, you're not going to be as good as somebody who rides every day, right? So it's just all about how frequency, right?
Yeah, I think it must be the same for you with your music.
Exactly. Yeah, the more you play, the more muscle memory you have because you just know how to do things. It'll unlock learning where you're like, I didn't know I could do that. So, but you'd never learn until you do it. So yeah, it's great. It's a good analogy. I like the correlation between writing and music.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what do you like to write as an author now?
I like contemporary Christian fiction.
Okay.
I because of my work in social services, I've worked with low-income women, single moms. I've worked with visually impaired adults and children and families. Mm. I've worked with unemployed in the effort to get them back to work. I've worked in a welfare department and for a municipality. And so I've met lots of other people and talked and worked with people with encountering a lot of different struggles and challenges in their life. So I like to write about those things. And because I'm a Christian author, I like to write about how having a relationship with Jesus affects our lives, and that he is the one that can see us over the rocky places when we trust in him.
That's really important. And I'm glad that you said that. The other part too is the social service side for you and all of your experience and all the years serving your community, that's got to feed its way into your writing as well. Like, do you have an example of kind of like how your background has kind of influenced you as a writer?
Well, when you deal like people that poverty
Yeah.
is I've dealt with people living in poverty, immigrants, new immigrants. Some of these, my first book was about a new immigrant from Mexico, and in fact, she was an illegal immigrant, and
Hmm.
it's how it affects their lives and why they come to our country and whether they come legally or illegally. And so those types of things, and I've worked with illegal immigrants and legal immigrants and refugees. And so those
Yeah.
things can find their way into my books.
I feel when I talk to you, Dorlin, that there's a lot of love for people and a lot of love for community from you. It just kind of comes out when you talk about your career and what you've done in the past and your writing. How important is it for you to accent and focus on community in your writing and the love for people? Does that kind of feed its way into your writing too?
I think so. Like I've always worked with people, and
Yeah.
it gives me great pleasure to see people, in spite of challenges, that
Yeah.
they'll go ahead and that they'll make progress. And I want to show in my books, as I said before, that when people place the faith in Jesus, that He helps them over the struggles that they face in life.
And now you have these books that you're writing, which gives you a platform to share that message even more.
Exactly. That
Right.
it's exciting for me. I'm really enjoying it.
Excellent. So let's talk about to the readers then listening as well. Who would you say would be your ideal reader? Maybe an age, maybe male, female? Is there a target audience that you have for your book?
I would say probably it's women that read
Okay.
my books more than men, although
Okay.
some men have read them. I would say it's women, middle-aged women up to older women. I
Okay.
would like some younger women too. So my target audience, I would say, is probably women from 30 up to, senior citizens in their 70s and 80s.
Okay.
That wider range, I think my books appeal to.
Excellent. Would you say that a reader would have some sort of faith background to understand and love your writing, or is it open to people who maybe don't have a faith background?
It's open to those who don't have a faith background.
Okay.
Because the characters in my books don't initially have a faith background. So
Okay.
it's often about how they come to have a faith background.
Okay. Oh,
So
good.
it's open to anyone who would like to read my type of book, who would likes to read about contemporary issues.
Okay. Right. So talk more about the more recent book that's coming out soon. Like, what are you excited about? Tell us more about the book.
It's called Cause to Triumph. It's the third book of a 3-book series. The series is called the Victory Series, and it's about a husband and wife and the 2 daughters, and it follows them through as the daughters grow up. And in the first book, it's about Cassie has a gambling addiction. She's the mother, and she ends up losing her 2 daughters and her husband, and they also lose their house because of her gambling. And she ends up living out of her car. And she's at the bottom, and she can't stop. She keeps gambling. And she comes to know the Lord as her savior. And it's not like her problems magically disappear, but through her relationship with the Lord, He helps her out of this pit that she's found herself in. And I don't want to tell any more of the
Yeah.
story.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
That's good.
so that's the first book. And then the second book is about her daughter who has an abortion
Mm.
and while she's at university, and Cassie learns about it by accident. And it brings back to her the fact that at 16 she had a child. She wasn't married, she was very young, and she gave it up for adoption. And it's about her
Mm.
finding that adopted child and
Wow.
their rocky relationship when they meet each other. And then this third book is called Cause to Triumph. And it's about the daughter who had the abortion. She's very anti-God. She would call herself an agnostic. She doesn't want anything to do with God. She and her boyfriend go on a trip to Las Vegas, and they just decide on a whim to get married out there. And he is an accountant, and he ends up having somebody who is a criminal as one of his clients.
Mm.
And a criminal is involved with the Montreal crime family. I've had to make it Canadian, of course.
There you go. Of course,
It couldn't be a New York crime family. It had to be and they end up going into the witness protection program. And something awful happens to them while they're in that program. But in the course of it, she does find the Lord.
Well,
So it's kind of something I haven't done before about getting into crime, and it was kind of interesting to write.
so when you write in a new area like that around crime, for example, what are you doing as an author to prepare? Are you doing lots of research? Like, how do you prepare for that?
You have to do lots of research. And for one of, I've gone to police stations. I've seen the local jail and what it looks like. And you just have to do the research so that you can write knowledgeably about what's happening in the story.
So you just walk into the police station and say, I want to see the jail. Or did you get into trouble? Doralyn, did you get into trouble?
Make an appointment. And
okay, good.
Yes, I got to talk to some detectives and things like that. So it was interesting. Nice. Yeah.
Well, I love that you did that. Instead of trying to imagine what it's like, to go there and talk to them, and then to actually stand and see the jail. That's good research. That's good background work. I like that you did that.
Yeah, no, I think it makes your books more realistic.
Right. That's good. What was their thought of an author coming to see them to ask them questions? Were they curious about you?
Yeah, they were, and they said, let us know when the book's finished. I have been remiss. I forgot. I didn't send them a book, but I really should, because they were quite interested.
Well, in typical police humor, we'll grab them some donuts and coffee and bring them a copy of the book and let them see it. I think they'd love to see it.
That's a great idea. I didn't think about the donuts and coffee. That's a great idea.
You'll get in there, no problem.
Exactly.
I like that. That's really good. I'm glad that you did that. I don't think a lot of new authors would even consider doing that kind of research and background. They might go onto the internet, they might watch a video on YouTube, but to go there, like you said, and stand there and meet them, ask questions, and be in the environment, I think that makes your writing even better.
Yeah, and it makes it more enjoyable for me, and it makes it easier for me to write it because I've actually seen what it's like.
Yeah. So when you sit down to write, you can picture your characters in that scene and in that space.
Yes.
And how they might react, right?
Exactly.
Okay. That's great. What other things would you suggest for a new author listening? They're maybe wrestling again. We talked a little bit about imposter syndrome, like who would read my work, who would want to read my stuff. But beyond the act of writing every day, is there anything around maybe writing in community, like working with fellow authors and talking to other authors, getting feedback on your work? Did you do any of that as well?
I do. I have an editor that I use that does an initial, like I'll do the initial draft of my work and then I set it to her. And she does an overall edit of what I've done. And she tells me what she thinks does work and what doesn't work. And she makes suggestions. And that is invaluable when writing a book, because naturally, when you've written something, you think it's very good. But without,
Yeah.
I almost hate getting it back from her when she sends it back to me, because you feel, oh, you're so discouraged. But then when you start going through the changes that she suggested, it really starts to make sense, and it does make the book better. So feedback on what you've written initially. The first draft is just that. It's a very rough draft, and your books have to go through many, many edits and before it's finally ready to be published.
So don't go into writing your first book or novel with the impression that I'm going to write it once. It's done. It's perfect. And I don't need any edits. I'm just going to write it once and I'm good. But go into it understanding you're going to have to do some work on this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that the writing is really rewriting. It's rewriting and rewriting and rewriting until, in fact, with this third book that's just going to be coming out, I'm waiting for the chief editor to get back to me, and she'll have gone through it. This will probably be about the fourth time it's been gone through. And she may even have more changes that need to be done. So it's a lot of rewriting.
So beyond coming on my podcast, and I'm glad to have you here, beyond coming on to a podcast, what else are you doing to tell people about your book?
That is where I struggle the most, Dave. The marketing of the books is the most difficult for me. Writing is easier. It's just knowing how to get your name out there. I have a website. I have a newsletter I send out. I do a blog. I do have done a number of podcasts and radio interviews.
Good.
And I do speaking engagements and vendor events. But you have to be constantly working to get these. It doesn't come easily, is what I'm trying to say. You have to look for them. You have to scramble.
Yeah, I think for you, as I listen to you talk about who your audience is, I could imagine you maybe with a little table set up at a women's conference or even a small women's get-together coffee meeting at the local church where they get together and bring the community together and have you there. Any kind of bookshops to do a reading from your book and meet the author type thing would be a great opportunity for people to come and meet you and to get an autographed copy of your book. Like, that's exciting for a reader, right?
Exactly. And I've done those types of things, and they are the audience enjoys it. Like, you're right. They love getting a signed copy.
Yeah.
It's just
and just to have time with you.
Yes.
Right?
And they can ask questions and things like that. It's personal, quite personal.
Because when we go into a typical bookstore or you look on a website online for a book, there's just a sea of books. And you're like, I don't even know where to start. I don't know what would be a book that I would enjoy or my family would enjoy, my friend would enjoy. So having time with you and then hearing you read to us a portion of the book or tell us a story from the book and how it came to be, I think that builds a better connection between the reader and the author. And that's really the reason why I'm trying to do this podcast is I want people to hear the story from your perspective on the book so that when they see your book on a website or in a store, they're like, that's Doralyn's book. I heard her talk about this book on the podcast. So I really want to make that connection. That's why we're doing the show.
I know. I think it's great. I was so happy when you agreed to have me on. It's a great opportunity for authors. And you're right. As we're starting, we're developing, we need these opportunities.
The one thing I like to find out from authors as well is, how did you find your voice as an author? Did you find it in the first book, or are you still searching for your voice as an author as you continue to write?
Do you know this will be my fourth book, and I believe now I have found my voice. It took that long to actually find my voice, and in fact, I had an agent write to me that she likes my voice and my tone that comes across in my writing. But it took a while for that to happen.
And as you write multiple books, I'm curious, what gets easier for you to do in the writing process and what is still difficult for you?
It does get easier. It really does. The most I think I find is plotting and characterization are the things I have to work on the most. And you need a good plot you need to keep your reader. And for those readers out there listening to you, you want to keep turning the pages. I don't want you to take my book, get halfway through and say, oh, I don't want to read this anymore, and you put it off to the side. I want to keep you turning those pages. So that's the thing that's the challenge.
I like when people are aware of the challenges that they have to face, because then they can work on those things and that can become their strength over time once they put the effort in. So that whole idea of plotting. Yeah, I have some authors on the podcast and they plot everything. They have notes which lead to this, which leads to this. They have everything all mapped out before they even start writing, like fully invested in the writing. And then I have people like yourself who come on and I just write and I don't even know what's going to happen next. So I'm trying to find what is that balance, and do we need a balance? Because sometimes it's fun for you as a writer when you don't know what's going to happen next.
Do you know what, Dave? I love it. Nothing makes me, it tickles my fancy more than when I have a character and they take off and I can't even explain how this happens, but they take off and do something that I never planned for them to do. And it's wonderful. And I think, how did this happen? It just happens. It's really fun.
Yeah, it's like taking your 3-year-old to the mall. You'd have no idea where they're going. You're like, where are we going now? What's happening? Where? And your characters are just going all these different directions, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm just going to try to keep up with my characters as they go on this journey. I like that too. I think that's fun.
Yeah, it is. But you're right. You have to rake them in. I mean, I do have a note. I shouldn't say that I just write anything that comes to my mind. I do have an overarching idea of what I want the book to be, but I don't have it like some authors, like you mentioned, I know do with everything is plotted out. That's just not the way I work. I think if I worked that way, I'd never get started. I'd be so busy trying to get everything. I just know from my personality that I just be continually working on my outline rather than working on the writing.
Do you find you have a conversation with your characters as you're writing? Are you talking with them and they're kind of leading you and talking back to you?
Yes, they do. They do.
Really?
You have to have a relationship. You have to know your characters. And some of them you like and some of them you don't like.
Interesting. If you could pick one of your characters from any of your books in the past or the current one coming up, and they were to come and sit down and have a conversation with you in real life, what kind of questions would you ask of your character that you might not know fully what the answer might be?
I think it's amazing. I think my favorite character is from my first book called 70 times 7. Her name is Maricela, and she was the immigrant who came to Canada illegally from Mexico because she was physically and sexually abused by her stepfather. And she had an aunt who lived in Canada, and that's what brought her to Canada, because for her safety. And I think I would want to explore with her more the depth of what it was like being in Mexico, being abused. Her mother pretended her mother pretended that she didn't know what was going on. She allowed it to happen. And her daughter knew She had to get away. And just to talk to her about the grief that she felt, I tried to get it into, across in the book of having to leave everything that was familiar with her culture, her family. She had a younger brother that she loved dearly. And she just had to leave secretly. She wrote, she contacted her brother after she'd left. And then coming to a brand new culture. And she ended up in Toronto, which, is a big city. And she came from a small Mexican village and just adjusting to that and of how the Lord took care of her. I just like to talk to her more about that.
So, okay, so let's talk to the reader then who is maybe can identify with your characters and they're living a life where maybe gambling is a problem for them. Maybe there's issues in their family. Maybe there's big, big things that they're working through in their own personal life. As they come to your books as a reader, do you have a special message for someone who's facing some big things in life and maybe how your books are going to be a comfort and a guide for them as they work through some of these big things personally?
Yes. I always, in my life, I came to know Jesus as my Savior and dedicated my life to Him. And He is the most important person in my life. And I believe that He has made a way for us to be reconciled with the Father, with His Heavenly Father, through His death and through His resurrection, that when He died for us, He provided forgiveness for all the mistakes that we've made. And we've all made mistakes and done things that we know haven't been right. And that through Him, we can experience forgiveness and be brought back into relationship with God as our Heavenly Father. I want people who read my books to come to know that they can be made right with God and that He loves them no matter what they're going through. He loves them, and He had to love them to send His only Son, and that He is there with them through their challenges, that He will lead them and guide them. It's not that I'm not saying that they won't have challenges, but that He will go with them through the challenges and lead them to the other side in victory. And that's the messages that I want to get across in my books.
Excellent. So if you're listening and you feel like you're alone in this world and you have to solve all these things on your own and you have no tools, you have no way of dealing with some of the hard things that happen in life, Doralyn's books are going to be a great resource for you to encourage you that you're not alone, that you have someone in your world that loves and cares for you, right, Doralyn? So
That's right.
That's a great thing to write about. You could write about anything, Doralyn. You could do cookbooks. You could do all kinds of different things that you could write. But the fact that this is what you're focused on, helping people, it's that whole career that you love and you cherish, serving your community in social services, now translated into written word. You're still helping people in a different form, but you're still connecting with your community and helping people through some pretty hard days. So I love that you're taking your love for community and you're using it as an author now. I think that's fabulous.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I just, yes, I thank the Lord for it. It's something that I thoroughly, thoroughly enjoy. And it's something that I have the time to do now that I'm retired.
Excellent. So the one thing I get questions a lot from listeners, Doralyn, they're like, I love your interview with Doralyn, but I want to reach out to her. I have a women's thing coming up and a women's meeting, and I'm looking for a guest speaker. I would love to have an author to come and talk to my group, and I would love to get in touch with her. If that's somebody listening, Doralyn, and they want to talk to you about your books, they want to talk to you, having you maybe speak or do something with them, where's the best way to get people to connect with you so they can reach out?
Okay. You can connect with me on my website, which is www.doralyn, Doralyn, Moore, Moore, .ca. So it's just my name, .ca. There's a contact page on my website. You can send me a message and I will get in touch with you right away, and we can set up something. And also to let you know that my books are available on Amazon and on Kindle. And you just look under my author name, Doralyn Moore, to find them.
Excellent. We'll have links for all of that in the show notes as well. Doralyn, we're getting to the end of 2024. We have a new year ahead of us. So I'm going to ask you this because it's the name of my podcast, and I'm curious to hear your answer. But we're here called Living the Next Chapter. So I know your new book's coming out. I'm excited for that. But whether it's related to writing or what in general terms, how are you living your next chapter? What's coming up for you down the road in 2025?
Well, I trust Dave, more books.
Good.
Books and more books. In fact, I'm just working on a book. 2 years ago, my husband passed away. And so I am writing a fiction book. It's called The Widow's Journey. And it's partly based on my experience, even though it's fiction. And it's been quite an interesting journey. I'm about 3/4 of finished it. And so that's one thing that I would really want to get published this in 2025. I think widows especially will recognize themselves in some of the things that happened to my widow in this book called The Widow's Journey. And I would also like to start, another series. I enjoy writing series and have the characters continue on from book to book. So that's also on my calendar for 2025.
Well, you're going to have to keep me in mind as new projects come up and you're ready to go out and talk about them. I would love for you to come back on the podcast. So I know my listeners love hearing from a guest returning and sharing all the new projects they're working on. So please keep me in mind, okay?
I certainly will. I'd love to come back.
Excellent. Everyone, all the information for Doralyn is in the show notes. As always, would love for you to go buy a copy. It's the end of the year. You're looking for gift ideas, great gift ideas for you and your family and your loved ones. When you buy a copy of Doralyn's book, please leave a great review wherever you buy the book, so more people know about these great books and more people will come and press purchase and buy these books as well. You can definitely help Doralyn just by leaving a great review. I'm encouraging everyone listening to do that. And as well, reach out to Doralyn. I know she would love to hear from you. She's one of the sweetest, kindest people you are going to meet ever. So you have to reach out to her. I know she'd love to hear from you and that you listen to this podcast.
Yes. Thank you, David. Thank you about the review. I thank you so much. I should have mentioned that. Thank you.
It's great. Everyone, please go do that. Doralyn would love to hear from you. If you have a women's group, if you have a conference and you're looking for a vendor to set up a table and talk about her books and sign them at the event, Doralyn would love to meet some people and talk about her journey as an author and get these books into the right hands. So please, as you're listening to this and you're planning an event, reach out to Doralyn. I know she'd love to come and talk to you about possibly working with you as a guest, as a speaker, as an attendee. I know she'd love to talk to you. Doralyn, thank you so much for being part of the podcast.
You're welcome. Thank you, Dave.
Hey, thanks for being here for the Living the Next Chapter podcast. So glad to have you as part of our family of listeners. There's a seat for you just here on Living the Next Chapter, and I'm so happy that you have listened to all the way to the end. Wow, you are now my new bestie. I want to let you know that I host 7 other podcasts on top of Living the Next Chapter. Yep, 8 total. One of them is called the How To Podcast series. If you are thinking, you know what, Dave, this podcast thing seems like a lot of fun, well, I'll give you a secret. It is. It's a great, amazing, fun time where you can get to meet great people, get your word out there, promote your book, promote what your coaching program, whatever you're doing. Podcasting is great. And if you want to learn how to do this, what you're hearing right now, head over to howtopodcast.ca and look up the How to Podcast series on YouTube, whatever app you're listening on. You'll find me there. and I'd love for you to come listen to how to do this. And if you're interested and have questions on how to podcast, reach out to me at howtopodcast.ca. Thank you for listening. Talk soon.